to the phone, and I've got Kessben's lawyer, Kessben. He, you know him, is the chief executive of the Kessben group of companies. He's got a chain of companies, you know, around his business. Sometime in the course of the month, we were informed of he being arraigned before the court on charges of money laundering, and I think one charge of fraud as well, in respect of a huge amount of money that he was alleged to have laundered. In the course of the week, we're told that all the charges were dropped and he's been set free. His lawyer is joining us on the line, Ohene Jan. Good morning and welcome to Newsfile, sir.
Well, thank you, Sammy. But let me state that we're a team of lawyers representing Mr. Kessben, and that defense team was led by Wanka Adongo of Sorry at law.
That's correct. Thank you very much. Now,
and secondly, the second charge was not fraud; it was actually forgery.
Forgery.
Yes.
Forgery.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, tell us. You went to court, and then the Attorney General came in and put in a withdrawal, and then that was it. The judge struck out the case for want of prosecution. So end of case, is that it?
Well, that is correct.
And so, I mean, the matter is ended, is over?
Yes. The judge indicated that once the state was withdrawing the charges that were preferred against him, there was no case pending. So the matter was struck out for want of prosecution, and he was discharged accordingly.
Right. I'm asking that here he is, all he has got is his name. And you told us earlier that he suspected witch hunt. So if that is the case, and he's been let go, has there been any apology, anything of the sort, if they don't intend to rearrest him and file new charges?
Well, for me, that is always at the election of the accused person. In this case, Mr. Kessben, who is been freed, he would have to determine what he would want to do moving on. So that will be at this complete election.
I see. He doesn't feel that this was a case of malicious prosecution?
Well, for me, I'm unable as of now to say that explicitly, because as I said, it will be at his election to determine moving on what you want to do.
What we know is that when the state files a withdrawal or a nolli prosequi for that matter at the start of the case, they are indicating to you that, look, we got it wrong, or we don't have a case at all, or we want to build a better one and charge you with it. Your understanding as far as this one is concerned is that they got it wrong. Is that not the case?
Well, for me, as Section 59 of Act 30 indicates, the state or the Attorney General, for that matter, is not enjoined or compelled or required to proffer any reasons why they withdrew the charges. And as you have indicated, there are other options. So for now, we'll wait and see what happens next. Yes, as far as we are concerned, he has been discharged and he's moving on.
We are told that his businesses were even affected. There are people who were running to the microfinance business he operates and seeking to withdraw their money. And so if he doesn't feel hurt, he doesn't feel offended in any way, he doesn't feel that he should take a civil suit and get his name cleared and get some compensation for what has happened to him?
Well, I mean, as I indicated earlier on, I mean, ordinarily when people heard that there was a local bank that was used to facilitate the charge of money laundering, the conclusion was that since it was a local bank, they assumed that it was the Multi-Credit Savings and Loans Limited. But subsequently, when it came to light that actually it was Stanbic and not Multi-Credit Savings and Loans Limited, the panic withdrawal that people intended doing ceased. So that was it. And the business, all the businesses are running. They've not been affected in any way. But as I indicated earlier on, the election as to whether or not to take any further step in respect of what transpired as at the election of the person who was at the center of affairs. In this case, Mr. Kessben.
Okay. So he's home now, he's doing well?
Yeah, he's home now, he's doing well. He's so grateful for many Ghanaians who sympathized with him and who prayed for him. Right from the onset, he had indicated that he was doing legitimate business and he was not liable for the offenses preferred against him. So he's holding on. He's a very strong person. And,
okay.
He's in good spirit.
Thank you very much, Ohinijan.
You're welcome, Tommy.
Right. Now, Kuku, how could the state have gotten it so wrong? Because if they don't rearrest him and press any other charges, then the conclusion is that they got it wrong, absolutely wrong.
Well, you recall that I said a bird had whispered into my ears that that was one of the dead on arrival cases, that it looked, to be more precise, like one of the dead on arrival cases. This is about 3 weeks ago, if you recall, even though I conceded that if the state authorities had any suspicion, reasonable suspicion if they thought so, they could proceed, except that they should go according to law and interrogate and investigate the matter. I think that's what has happened. The bird who whispered into my ears has been vindicated. I have no further comment.
A very mischievous.
Is it a bird within the Attorney General? Or a bird within the BNI?
I want to know the color of the bird.
I have no further comment.
well, some of them, I think that it would be...
You even wait for me to call you.
Oh, I thought
go ahead. Go ahead. No, it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Well, I think it would be premature to make any conclusive statements at this stage, because it is not unusual for the state to drop charges against an individual.
It's allowed by law.
It's allowed by law. So to the extent that due process was followed, it will be premature to make any conclusive statements. Also, let me commend his lawyer.
By practice, when they intend to charge you again,
they will arrest you.
They re-arrest you right there.
Well, but it doesn't mean that they can't arrest you later. So that's why I'm urging caution in this matter. Well, again, it will be premature. To the extent that due process was followed and his rights were not violated, I think that the state, if they felt there was a basis for arresting him and taking some action against him through the law courts, they were entitled to do so. Also, the state, in my view, did not seek to unnecessarily tarnish his image. At least I didn't hear any individual connected with this case, be he an Attorney General's office. Well, as for
depreciation, depreciation of the city.
No.
They link the depreciation of the city.
There's a difference between what the media says about the case and what officialdom says about a case. The very fact that there is speculation in the media about his guilt or otherwise doesn't mean that state officials, who in this case would be the police, the BNI, or officials of the Attorney General's department, are necessarily culpable for what media outlets, be it social or traditional,
NDC communicators. That's
no, is it NDC communicators, whether they are NDC or not, are individuals. They are entitled to their opinions. If Mr. Kessben feels
and that was
that
money
he has
close to 130.
No, it was significant. It was significant.
$30 million.
It was significant.
So that's a whole lot.
What I look out for really is the conduct of state officials involved in this particular matter, and to the extent that nobody can accuse them of having acted in an inappropriate way. I don't think that there's much of a short course, but he reserves the right to take action against those who say
the body of evidence that was put out there in the media by the BNI. What suddenly has happened to that? So that suddenly it turns out to be what? Untrue? All the allegations of how the money was laundered and everything else has turned out to be untrue?
That is really my worry. And I quite recollect during the debate that ensued when we were, excuse me, passing the anti-money laundering bill into law. The concerns we had and the kind of discretionary powers that we were given in terms of seizure of assets, freezing of accounts, and all those things. If you go into the Hansard, you will see there were extensive debates about these matters. And I think we've been justified to some extent about the position that we took on some of these issues. Now, you may not have damaged the person's businesses or reputations directly, immediately, but nothing stops the state from acting with circumspect especially when it is an allegation and it has the potential to affect the person in diverse ways. So we put out all this information in the public, and then we go to court, and then we say, no case. What have we done to the person? First, we have also exposed the state, because if he can have a clear audit trail of all these submissions to the media, and then he can civil sue these security institutions and end up getting some award to him, it is causing financial loss.
Judgment debt.
Well,
do you encourage him to do that? Would you encourage him to go to sue them?
I have always encouraged, not only in this instance, but even if you are driving on the highway and by some omission or commission of the highway authority, you suffer a loss. I encourage people to sue.
I ask you a direct question. Would you encourage
that is what I'm
sue?
saying, that he should look clearly at what has happened to him. And if indeed he thinks that he suffered some losses either to his person, to his businesses, I will encourage him to go ahead and sue, so that we bring this matter to its logical conclusion. But also let me
thank you.
To Parliament,
Yes.
a caution that when we are legislating, let us be very careful the kind of discretionary powers that we give to people, because it may very well be that those powers might be abused one day.
I see. That's your position on reading of that law. But when you read, if it's followed to the letter, I don't think that discussion is too wide, because if they freeze your account within a matter of 7 days, you have the opportunity to also go to court and ask for it to be defreezed. Okay. Thank you. John, there are those who are saying this is symptomatic of lazy work by officialdom.
I don't think so. You do recall that initially when we had a challenge with the fall of the cedi, the Bank of Ghana had to pump in $20 million. And so if the state has to pump in $20 million in an attempt to cushion the system, when about $130 million is taken out, it raises eyebrows. And that is a fact. You are a lawyer. Maybe if somebody is murdered and you find blood stains on somebody, immediately you may pick the person, and upon interrogation, if it comes down that look, yes, he is not connected to the crime, he releases the person.
But you know your first reference about the state pumping 20 million, but we're talking about 130 million of private.
No, that's why I told you that it raises some level of suspicion.
Okay.
The most important thing for me is that there shouldn't be witch hunting. The state should not abuse its powers. It should not be seen as if you are targeting a legitimate business. That is very, very important, and that ought to cut across the entire spectrum. If you listen to the lawyer, and you listen to the man himself, it would appear, and I think that I have every cause to draw that conclusion, that he is not bitter, that he doesn't feel targeted, and that he's not even considering suing for damages or whatever you choose to describe it. Not in the NDC, of course, not in the NDC. Because the lawyer clearly says that, yes, initially people attempted to, but now the business is flourishing, and that he's at peace. And that he's at peace. And for somebody to be at peace, it means that he has inner peace. Because you cannot be at peace if you don't have inner peace.
Okay.
So I would want to just end it there.
John, you continue. I want you to continue from there on the issue of the revival of the Commander Sugar Factory. The president, broke the grounds for that, and we are aware that there's money. It's a joint venture between the government of Ghana and India, and they are pumping a total of $35 million. Ghana is contributing $1 million to it. You may have followed Imani Ghana. They have done some work, and they suggest that that money is woefully inadequate. What you need to revive that factory is $90 million.
I read the Imani statement, and I really wanted to see the breakdown. Because before you engage in such a project, you would have done what you call capital budgeting, or feasibility study, but really capital budgeting, because that tells you the expenditure you make, the revenues that you get, and where you can break even, either using NPV or internal rate of return, and all those kind of financial instruments that you would use to determine how viable a project is. And I'm convinced that for somebody to invest as much as 35 and you contribute just about 1 million, the person would have been adequately been informed that it is viable. Beyond that, there's another 24 million. And I thought that they should have captured that. Another 24 million for the plantation itself. Yes, the factory will come on board, but you need sugarcane. And as an agri student, I call it Saccharum officinarium. That's the botanical name
okay,
for
we don't have
sugarcane.
time
To deal with that, Ghana spends about $300 million per annum importing sugar. And the president gave the breakdown that we export $13 billion worth of goods and import $17 billion worth of goods. So there's always a deficit of $4 billion. And out of that, we consume about 370,000 metric tons of sugar every year. This can close that gap. And can you imagine if Ghana saves $300 million per annum? Because what happens is that, yes, you buy the sugar in Ghana, but immediately you are saved the forex because you don't need to carry your CD, go and convert it and change it. And so I think that it is commendable. Let's keep an eye on that. Let's ensure that we meet the time frame. The plantation itself ought to run concurrently with the factory, so that by the time the factory is ready, the plantation can then.
We're looking at how many? 24 months? 2 years?
24 months. But beyond even the sugar, has to do with the molasses that generates ethanol, which you use for alcohol. And even the chaff, the straw that comes out of it, can be used for mushroom cultivation and other things. So this project is a very, very good project. Let's push it, let's monitor it, and ensure that we deal with that.
Okay, just by way of additional information, Felix, just some 30 seconds, tell us. I'm reading elsewhere that it's going to generate in excess of 3,000 jobs.
Yeah.
That's
actually 7,000. Yeah.
Okay, and then I'm reading elsewhere that it will generate 1,300 direct jobs for the industrial workers, and then smallholder farmers are going to get. It's going to create about 5,000 jobs.
So, you're talking about 7,000.
So the correct figure is supposed to be about 7,000 jobs.
That is a correct.
Direct and indirect.
That is a correct. Both direct. And indirect.
Very interesting. Fred, that's good news. We are reducing the unemployment by about 7,000 in the next 2 years.
It is always good when we are able to help people win bread and have some sustenance. But the points I would like to highlight in this instance has to do with, number one, if you recollect, under President Kufuor's administration, a feasibility study was done on this particular project where I think it was under Mr. Alancho Martin's tenure as Minister for Trade. And it came out that even the size of land that is required to be able to operate the factory at the capacity you are talking about, you may no longer find it available in the Commander area.
1,000 hectares.
It's 1,700.
Yes, and so there was the suggestion that this whole thing now be moved towards the northern part of the country. And this is where I caution as politicians that during our electioneering campaigns, when we make promises and pledges, and then we assume office, and technical and feasibility studies suggest otherwise, we should be bold and come out. Not just because you've probably been to Commander and told the people that, look, when I come to office, I will revive this factory, and then you go ahead and start reviving the factory, knowing very well that the feasibility is suggesting that this factory, if you really want to operate it and
what are you
let
saying?
it
You have
survive,
doubts about this revival move?
that in the short term, you may, in the short political sphere of between now and election 2016, you may very well see a factory come up, people get work to do, see some sugar being produced, and all that.
It's supposed to come up in the next 2 years. That looks politically strategic.
That is the point I'm making.
No. It's a sustainable operation.
But in the medium to long term,
Let's take it that way.
No, this has absolutely nothing to do with
the
politics.
medium to long term,
Commitment to the people of Ghana.
especially when the NDC is out of office in 2017.
Certainly not.
And in the medium term, you start seeing the effects of what this decision is taking. Then the blame game will start. That we left this in the hands of the MPP and look at them running down this. When they knew from day one that because of the location.
So
because
we are unable
is
to
very
look at
important to the raw materials.
the World Cup Commission hearing. Koku, briefly on this point, and then we'll move on. You will be looking at sustainability.
Yes, the profitability, the viability, and all that. It started. So perhaps what we should do is to protect, police it, and make sure it grows.
Absolutely.
But I've heard the points that Fred Ansan has raised. I've heard it. And so that should be considered. I'm told that Fram Plains, the northern part of Brong-Ahafo region, and the northern region, in terms of land space and climate, are more favorable. But once we've begun with this, I'm not sure we can reverse the project. Let's just make sure it's sustained. So I'm in principle for it.
Yeah, but this is a sustainable project. And something, the final point, there's actually another one meant for Sabelugu, which will come up in due course. That is a much bigger effort than this one. It will produce about 6,000 or 600 tons. Yeah, the Mauritius one, 600 tons of sugar a day, which runs into about 250,000 tons of sugar annually. And that would significantly bridge our import gap. Yes.
I mean, there is a two-pronged approach.
Yes.
Thank
Commander and Savulugu.
Yeah.
So we're killing two birds with one stone.
Killing two birds with one
No
stone.
propaganda.
At the time that the president was doing this, war was really